Welcome back. Tim here, Gamma VD. Fun one today. Going to be doing an install on the 200 series speaker grill replacement, accessory mount, whatever you call it. Brand new product, first new product of 2022. Pretty excited to get into it. Today it's going to be on a 2018 200 series Land Cruiser, so 16 and up Land Cruisers. There's other styles of this for the Lexus models and the 2008 to 15 models as well. So just to keep that straight, but I think the install is going to be about the same on all of them. Just the shape of this thing actually changes on every single one of those. So anyway, excited to get into this. Let's dive in. So to start, we're going to want to remove the stock panel. You're going to need a couple little trim removal tools. It can be any of them, and what you'll find is there's really not that much resistance here. You just got to get it started, and then it'll kind of pop up. Once it does that, you can just really rip it up by your hand. But we'll use the tools here just because we got them. And then you free that guy, and then you got a wire in there for the headlight sensor. So I found it's easier to just take a little pokey end. You could use a pen, a small screwdriver, but just push in that little wire connector to get it to free up. And then there you go, factory one removed. On to the next step. Your next move, I'm just going to show you here, is the screen is held on by a number of these little tabs. So you can use your thumb to pry those up. You want to just go around the perimeter and pull each one of these guys up to essentially free it. And then once that's done, as you can see in the back here, we got a couple there. So you're just going to go all the way around, and in the front, it's a little bit of like some sticky tape, but you just peel that back. And when that's done, you ultimately will be able to free the screen from the plastic surround bezel. And we're going to put the screen aside, but we're reusing this plastic. So here's what that looks like with the tabs starting to be vertical, and I'm literally just pulling that out and separating it. The back is at a little bit of an angle, but it's pretty easy to manipulate. Just push it up with your thumb as you gently pry it apart. But essentially what you're doing is just separating that screen from that plastic piece. See, I'm almost there. There we go. So there's our plastic piece, ready to go. Here's our screen, most likely never to be used again, but there you go. That's how you separate that. So now one of the fun parts, and that's deciding where on here I want to mount what accessory. And I think this makes this product kind of cool because I think everyone's setup's going to be a little bit different. So, and that's great. It's going to be fun to see what people come up with. So I think on mine, I'm going to put one of these flat USB chargers. See that? I'll put that over here on the left side. That's going to look about like that. And then I want to run one of our 3D printed single socket holders. I'm going to put that over here on the right side, and that's going to be a dual battery monitor for me. So I got main and auxiliary on that one. That should be pretty cool. And then I'm going to do a single RAM mount kind of up here in the front. So pretty straightforward to bolt those guys on. I am going to drill a hole for the wires here. So actually the wire's over here. So let's go drill a couple holes. So a lot of ways to drill a hole, right? Drill press, hand drill. I'll just go for this guy with the step drill on there. And the number I'm going for is 7/16 because that matches these two big holes that we have on the panel already, which is size for these little grommets. So that's why I chose that hole size. So the other trick, I'm just gonna take a block of wood, and that's gonna be my backing plate for that, so that when I drill, that sheet metal isn't gonna like create a huge burr. It should stay fairly clean, and then I can just drill right into the wood. I don't have to worry about my nice workbench here. So pretty simple. Let's drill a hole. So I love that smell of burning wood, but it doesn't really help my hole much. So what I'm gonna do is, now that I've got kind of half a hole, is I'm just gonna move this over to kind of right off the edge of that block, and then I'll go ahead and get it to final diameter, work a little bit quicker. And there we go. I kissed the bit on both sides just so I didn't have any kind of a burr, but now I've got another hole there that matches these other guys, and that's going to fit my grommet really nice. So, hole complete. So a little bit on wiring. I've got 3 wires for this little battery gauge, 2 hots in the ground. And on one end of it, I've got the, the female connector that's going to go on the back of that. And then I put male connectors on the other one. That's going to correspond to the wiring inside the truck. Got to get it through the grommet. In hindsight, I should have put them through the grommet before I shoved these little ends on there. So I gave myself a little bit of a project. But if you take a needle nose pliers, kind of put it on the end there, and then you can use that as a stretcher to expand that, and then hopefully give yourself enough of a gap to where you can wiggle that through. You see that? Pull your pliers out, and then that threads through the grommet. But I got to get all 3 through there, so it's going to take me a minute. I'll be right back. Okay, that wasn't that bad. I got all 3 wires through the grommet. There's my ends for the gauge. Here's my leads for the wires in the truck. That will then now go through there. I'll have to do them one at a time, but they're going to go. But before I do, I'm going to need some clearance for those wires once they go through the panel on the plastic piece. Let me show you. When I lay this on top of here, I look from the top, here's my new hole, but all I see is black there. Now there's a little bit of room to sneak some wires around, but at some point you're going to need an exit hole in that plastic bezel to get your wiring out, because you can't put it through the speaker hole. That shuts off completely on that foam seal. So you're going to need to drill a couple holes through this plastic. And to do so, it's about as easy as it gets. Just take your Sharpie, mark where you want it, pull this off, grab your drill and fire away. So now I have a hole, and as you can see, I've played with this bezel a couple times, so I've got a couple other holes in here. I don't know that it matters. I'm going to cover it up. Only risk is just on the back side. Just make sure you're not going to hit one of these clips. I think we did a pretty good job though on guessing on the panel here where the holes are going to be so that doesn't happen, but that is a risk. You could always move something a little bit if you needed to. Not that big of a deal, but just kind of look before you leap, if you will, before you drill those holes. So I got my wires poked through, got my grommet started. Let's take a little screwdriver and kind of help pull it up, help pull that flange up. And the thing with the grommet is it's just to prevent abrasion on those wires, because electric wires running through a metal piece, you should have some kind of an insulation there. The nice thing about this application though is once this thing's installed, it's never moving, right? It's only during your install that you're at risk of actually abrading these wires. But it's just a nice safekeeping thing. The alternative is, if you didn't want to use these grommets, is you could just use some silicone. Window and door trim kind of stuff, clear silicone. You can kind of make your own quick gasket, just let that harden up, and then it'll protect those wires enough so where when they're sliding in and out of a hole in the metal, that they're not going to get, trimmed down and short out. Okay, so I got my gauge mounted up. I put my USB charger mounted up, backside. There's my strain relief, put a little silicone there, and pretty much ready to wire. So while that dries, let's jump over to the truck and take a look at that for a second and show you the wiring on that side. So on the engine side, I've always been a fan of the passenger side grommet. You can see some of my wires going through that grommet there. Basically, I just slit a little opening with a utility knife. And then I like to use these irrigation guys as a guide. So you find an opening in the grommet, you poke this through, you get into there, you make sure you can see it, you go, okay, that's my channel, pull this out, and then you wrap your wires around and put a bunch of electrical tape around here, and then squirt some Windex on it for some lube, and then you shove it through. It might take you a couple tries, but that's been my best move at feeding these through. There's more Pro Tools, there's actual wire grabbers that do it, but if you're a backyard guy, this could be what you need to do. So anyway, that's how you feed it. Probably a whole nother video, honestly, on how to wire things to your truck. Don't want to dive too deep in that, but I do want to show you at least kind of how I did that there. I think that gives you a good idea. Let me know if you have any questions. So inside the truck, your next move, presuming you went through the passenger side on your wiring, is pull this panel off, and it's literally just a grip it and rip it kind of thing. Set that aside. Then we're going to take this off, and it's really just one 10mm right here that pulls that guy off. And then it's got one push connection down here. Push that in with a little screwdriver, a little button, and you can pull that off. So we'll pull that off here. So this guy comes out just like so, very easily. This will pop out and fall on the floor, and then you're literally just pulling that forward like that. Set that aside. So here are my wires. I've got 2 hots and a shared ground for my battery monitor gauge thing, and then I've got my remote cable for the ham radio head unit. So that's going to go up and ultimately up to here. Down here in front of my feet, it's just running behind the carpet and then up through that grommet. So fuses, of course, up by the batteries. Next move then is going to be to remove the speaker, and that's just to create myself a little room to get my arm in there for the wires. So it's that same 10mm socket. Just kind of reach in there and twist those together, and then once that's free, you'll see underneath is just another little wire harness that you just squeeze and kind of disconnect. So there it is. We'll just set that speaker aside. So here's a trick you can try. I've kind of a safe move. I've got an extra hunk of wire here, and what I can do is I can just run this down. This works great if you have gravity on your side. I just run this down routed where I want these new wires to be, and then pull that out the bottom. So now you can see I've got both ends. So then on my bottom end, I'll take all my wires and just loosely tape them. Take my electrical tape here, a little piece, and I'm just going to tape these together. Just like that. So now I've got a piece. Of course this fell out, right? But you get the idea. I'm going to use this and I'm going to just pull it right back through. Give me 1 second. Okay, so take 2 on that. I got my wire here, and I've got my mess of wires taped to it. And I'm just going to very gently pull this up, and in so doing, hopefully feed that little hunk of wires in there. If you feel any resistance, you just want to try to find a new spot, and hopefully you'll get a place where it'll all kind of come up nice and neatly and freely for you. So there we go. So now we're kind of at the halfway point, right? So my next move then is I can literally reach in and feel behind there. Before I do, I might just take a look. Yep. You want to know where you're going, but the passage is pretty obvious. You could make an argument for just pulling the nav, and I don't know if the amount of time you spend kind of monkeying with this stuff, trying to pull it without, pulling them without pulling the nav versus just pull the whole thing. I saw that video. It doesn't seem that hard to just pull the whole deal, but if I can just hand myself this little wire, then I know I can just pull it up. So, all right, I got it. So now it's just a matter of very gently wiggling through the gap between the nav and the harness there, and it there. So, okay, I got my ham radio wire. So now I just got to get my other guys, and we'll be in business here. All right, really not that bad. It took me another 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. I got all my wires now coming up through here, plenty of room, and so now we're ready to hook this thing up and also put all this stuff back that I took off to get to this point. So putting the speaker back, super easy. Just plug it back in. There we go. Set it down on those little holes that it sits on. Put the bolts back in. Nothing to it. Tighten those up with the wrench here. Putting this guy on, super easy. Make sure my wires are not going to get pinched. Kind of line him up and just snap it in. Take your bolt, put that bolt right back in there, secure that. And then of course that little push connector, push it back the other way so that mini button's on the outside. And then it goes right back in its hole. So, all right, all set there. And then finally, this guy couldn't be any easier. Just line him up with his little slots there and pop him back in there. So, good as new, almost. Back at the tailgate here, light's a little bit better. This guy's pre-assembled. This guy's full of holes. Now we just got to stick the two of them together. So pretty simple. You just want to feed your wires through whatever hole you made for whatever accessory that you're bolting up, and then start to sandwich it together. When you do that, I found it's a little easiest to start in the back first and get these like back teeth kind of started. And once you work those through, then you can work your way up the sides. And really the sides should almost fall together once the back's in place. So there we go. Boom, coming together. Once that's essentially assembled, you're just gonna work your way around and squeeze it. And then start it in the back. Take your needle nose and just pull that back towards the inside of the panel. Work your way across. Do that for all four. And then you work your way up and do the 3 tabs on the sides. Again, just pulling those in with your needle nose pliers, squeezing them together as you do so. Your last move then is you can use the blunt of a linesman's pliers or a brass drift, and you're just gonna push those tabs down to where they're against that plastic bezel. So just to push them in that last little bit, kind of how that screen was that you first took off. Here's what that looks like with the drift. I got my block to support the back side because, you know, now I have accessories on there. I don't want to damage it. I'm just going to put that up there, and you're not going to hit it hard. You're just bending down that little piece of metal. So go all the way around the perimeter, get them nice and flat. Okay, so now we're assembled and essentially ready to plug it in and install. I still got to feed my ham radio faceplate wire up there. That'll be easy though. Before I do though, I think the argument could be made for getting another one of these. Readily available. You can't read that. 55510-60070. That's the part number. I kind of like the idea of, you know, night out on the town, don't need a bunch of gauges. Snap that in there. Heading out with the boys, want to put a bunch of junk on my dashboard. Plug it in and put that on there. Being able to play both sides of that. Nice thing about this mod is once you've done the wiring, once you've done all this bolt up install stuff, you're really down to a 45-second snap it off, unplug it, snap the other one on kind of thing. The only thing you're swapping out is that little headlight sensor, but that just kind of pushes up and through the hole. So really easy. So think about that one. Okay, so I've got my gauge wired up. I ran my ham radio feeder through another grommet, got that ready. And I pre-shoved those wires down in that hole kind of behind the speaker. You'll see it. You just want to make sure nothing gets smashed. Last step then is just, oh yeah, I also plugged back in the headlight sensor. But then we're just literally popping that dude down in there. And man, look at that. I'll just give you the quick walk around. That's what we're looking like. So that guy is ready to go. And with that, I think we can wrap it up. But that's how to turn this into that. Give you a whole bunch of accessory options. So, boy, make safe choices. Don't drive distracted. But, boy, your phone, your radio, some of your nav stuff, I think you're going to have some options now where you're going to have a good time with this one. So, let me know your questions. Let me know what else you want to see on these videos. And as always, thank you again. And I will see you